Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Scotted 2021. My name is Miselle Mombeshora, and I will be taking you through D365 operations, which is a Microsoft programming, relatively new, and I think about what it means, D365 financials. But before we add into our topic for today, I want to take this opportunity to sponsors. So Script Runner, Global, Proximo, Red, just Hitachi Solution. Thank you so much for making this possible. A big to Mark, as well as other people, the Scottish Summit have been behind all of work to make this event possible. A big thank you to you. I will now tell you a little bit about myself before I go to my actual presentation for today. I said earlier, my name is Mombeshora. I am Zimbabwe. I actually enjoy wildlife safaris. That explain you can see the sniff, the Victoria Falls come from. A map in terms of Zimbabwe there and a little bit of life there. So you can beautiful sunset. So that just me. In of my professional journey with D365 Finance Solution HCL Power Object. I've got a background in, so did my ACCA, decided not to follow it because, yep, I think it for me went on the technology front and I've back since then. I've worked on multiple ERP implementations across different industries and really enjoy kind of work. And for your own information, myself, two other lovely ladies from the community, Julia, and we have started a D365 user group. We would love for you to join, so look out for our updates. So if you do have any questions around our user group and vision, I have added my in and Twitter detail here, so please do out and connect. Just note, this is actually my first time being at such an event, so please go easy on me and bear with me. So let's get into our agenda for today. So what we will be looking at is we'll be talking about project operations, what it means from an overview perspective. I'll be taking you through the key features of project operations, so giving you a little bit of insight into this new product. And what we will also touch on is the deployment options. So with this product comes options in terms of deployment. What is key is so that you see what each and every one mean and how it is to your existing implementation or your customers and those probably looking to roll out project operations. So I am basing my presentation on one of the deployment options, which is an option that across two platforms. I will take you through what's available, what's not available, and with reference to what we've known in terms of classic PMA. And this also helps people who are more from a CE perspective or PSA perspective, just insight into what actually from a finance and operations side. We will do a very high level, go into the system. So this is just to get a feel in terms of a couple of the key features that I will have highlighted. So it's nothing end to end, but it's just to give you a feel of what it looks like and what you can do. Then lastly, I will give you an insight into a few key considerations. I'm currently in the middle of a D365 project operations implementation myself. So I will give a few key considerations, particularly around the deployment option that's across CE and F&O. So now let's go into what project operations is. So this is an end-to-end project management system which connects your sales, resourcing, project management teams in a single application. It unifies operations and connects teams in a single integrated offering. So I want to highlight on that integrated because that's one of the benefits of this, particularly if we are going with the deployment option against which is across the two platforms. So it also provides the visibility and insight across the life cycle. But even better, this product is taken the best features from three applications. So let me tell you which ones they are. These are existing Microsoft applications. So what we're getting is the best from PSA. So this is around the sales capabilities, the quotation, the resourcing, that's all gone into project operations. We're also getting the best from Microsoft projects. So this is all around the planning capabilities, and that solutioning is all coming into D365 project operations. What we're also getting is all the good features from D365 Finance and Operations. And what that means is the capabilities around project management, costing and accounting, all of that is embedded in project operations. So to top it up, Microsoft have gone and done some enhancements to the planning capabilities as well as the scheduling. So they've applied some intelligence to it. So it you know, to top it up, you know, it really gets better because components of project operations are built on Dataverse. So therefore making it customizable and extendable across Power Platform. So be it a custom application built with Power Apps or BI reporting, the capabilities are there. So such a good product, in my opinion. Great job for Microsoft, I must say. So now let's get into these deployment options. So as I'm talking about it, I'm saying that this project operations comes with a couple of deployment options. Let's give you that understanding in terms of what they mean. So from a customer engagement deployment option, so there is three options here. So the first one, let's talk about the customer engagement deployment option. So this is a light deployment. So it covers the life cycle from a deal to pro forma invoicing. So it leverages off the front end capabilities within the customer engagement front. In terms of who it's suitable for, I would say any existing of your customers that are on PSA, this would be a PSA only, that is, this would be a good deployment option for them. The reason why I'm talking about existing is because Microsoft will continue to support customers on existing PSA, I believe up till 2024. I might be wrong, but I think that's what they have said. So they will not be adding any new functionality around this. So be mindful. And if it's new customers, you know, so you would be looking at those who probably want to have, you know, all the front end capabilities within customer engagement, but probably integrating to a third party ERP system. So that's a suitable option for them. Now let's look into the next one. So this is the project management and accounting deployment. So this one I would say is like the one that's closest to a classic PMA. So this is more suited for project operations for stocked and production order scenarios. So any of your customers with warehouse, inventory, manufacturing needs, requirements, or in those industries, this one is the deployment option for them. So it also leverages on PMA capabilities. And please bear in mind or make note that there is no integration to customer engagement with this deployment option. Now, my favorite of all of them, and obviously this is, you know, scenarios are different, but I'm currently working on a full deployment. So I'm actually enjoying the capabilities around this, is the full deployment. So this one is more suited towards resource-based, where someone doesn't have, you know, stocked scenarios. It's not suited for inventory, warehousing, manufacturing. And it would be more suited to your existing PSA and F&O customers, as in those who have PSA integrated to F&O. So this would be ideal because it leverages off the capabilities across both platforms. Now, to give an insight into capabilities for all of these deployment options, let me take you through the capabilities. So what we've got is we've got the resource-based, which is really the one that's leveraging on customer engagement. So this green highlights what's available on the customer engagement front. So this is purely the light one, which is only on the customer engagement side. So you leverage, so in terms of capabilities, you get the whole sales process for project that extends the D365 sales application experience. You get your project planning, you get your multi-dimensional pricing. There's the element of resource management there, time tracking, basic expense entry, and pro forma invoice or customer-facing invoicing. So still a rich product. You're still able to get all of this with it. So again, it's just about your client's needs, right? So let's get on to the next deployment option. So this one is the one which I view as a classic PMA. So the blue, by the way, is what is available in finance and operations. So this is our project management accounting deployment. So this is more suited towards inventory-based scenarios. So in terms of the capabilities, you would still be getting all that we probably have in classic PMA. So when you think of your work breakdown structure, resource management, time tracking, there's a lot of new capabilities around expense management. So you'd be getting that whole experience of full expense, receipt OCR, full invoicing, and obviously the powerful revenue recognition engine. To top it up, this one would support production orders as well as material support. So lastly, it's the resource-based scenarios, which is our full deployment, which is the one which is our focus for today's session. So with this one, you still get all the good capabilities as well. But what I like is, as I said, the green is the customer engagement, the blue is the finance and operations. You are getting the both capabilities across both fronts. So, in terms of our sales, it's, you get all of that capabilities around that. Project planning using Microsoft Project for Web, multi-dimensional pricing, unified resource management, time tracking, basic expense, full expense, receipt OCR, pro forma and customer-facing invoices, revenue recognition. Wow, the list is endless. So you're getting all those capabilities with this deployment option. So I really like that. And what we are going to do is go on to our next slide, which now starts to actually focus on the full deployment option. So let's go into this, because this is what brings out what's available from a full deployment option. So I like how it goes across the different features in terms of sales, project planning, resourcing, project execution, invoicing, and revenue recognition. But also what's quite clear here is that split. So you can see that certain capabilities, which are typically operational processes, they all sit on the customer engagement side. Then when you look at the bottom part, which is the ones that are in like pinkish color, those are on the finance and operations side. So those, I would actually say, these are more our back office, and they're more suited towards when it comes to role-based, because I would say this is kind of structuring this more role-based. This is more suited towards our project accountants, our finance team, so anyone doing this back office. Then when you look at the top part, the top half, which is your operational, so this is your sales managers, your project managers. So those are the kind of roles already. So there's that segregation of the roles. So now let's just start to talk about key processes around this. Let's look at the leads and opportunity and quotations. So this capability is mastered in customer engagement with this deployment option. So we don't actually see visibility of this on the finance and operational side. So that's an interesting change. When it comes to project contracts and projects, so they are mastered in customer engagement, but we do get visibility of this from a finance and operational side. So I will touch a little bit more on my slides downstream in terms of what we can actually do, but we can't create, but we can view. When it comes to milestones, this is now under project planning. So when it comes to milestones play a key role in terms of our on account, as well as in terms of our estimate projects. So again, they're mastered on the customer engagement side. What we get from a finance and operations side is viewing the on account, or actually seeing an estimate created at the back of that milestone that's created. When it comes to project tasks, I almost want to compare them to what we had in classic PMA work breakdown structure, but it's not quite there. These project tasks are not really, so they are integrated as an attribute, a transactional attribute on the F&O side. But apart from that, I wouldn't say they're of much significance, probably for reporting, yes. Whereas our expense estimates and our resource assignments, they play a crucial role when it comes to finance and operations, because this is what drives our forecast. So again, we don't have that ability to create any of that from an F&O perspective, because that's mastered on the customer engagement. So resources are as well housed on the customer engagement side. It's possibly the roles that flow through to the F&O side. When it comes to time entry, they are mastered on customer engagement side. So what we get is they feed into, once they're approved, they feed into what we call our project actuals. What's interesting though is expense entries. Expense entries are mastered on the finance and operations side. They actually then feed through into the customer engagement side. And with time entries, once they get approved, they form what we call our project actuals. So project actuals is quite interesting, because this is what gets integrated into F&O, and we then start to get visibility of that on the integration journal. So on that integration journal, this is where we actually start to see the transactional parts coming from customer engagement. So there's a little bit of stuff that we can do when it comes to the integration journal, which we'll discuss a little bit later on. But once that journal is posted, this is what posts into our project subledger. and subsequently our general ledger. So this is, just to emphasize that we can't actually create any of these. Most of they are really mastered from a customer engagement side, so we just are able to view what comes across. So when it comes to invoicing as well, the invoicing journey and creating these what we call pro forma invoices, that is driven from customer engagement. So someone would look at time, say if it was a time and material, they would look at mark certain transactions ready for invoicing, and those in essence, once they get confirmed, they come onto a pro forma invoicing. Similarly with milestones, and they're just pushed across into F&O, where we're able to view invoice proposals, and then once posted, that's our invoice journals, which feeds into our ledgers as well. So what glues everything together, what pieces all of this is this dual rights. So that's really important. So this is the integration piece that is all happening in the background. So if you've had any implementations around PSA, maybe to F&O, there would always be that worry in terms of, wow, we need to get the integration piece right. Well, with project operations, Microsoft is taking care of that for us. So that's a good thing. So I just want you to be aware that in terms of my session for today is focusing more on the finance and operations side. But for your own information, there is actually a session that's taking place on Saturday at 4 p.m. So Auntie and Aurelian will be presenting on a session called Welcome to Project Operations, and that's going to focus on the top half of this, what actually happens from a customer engagement side. So please look out for it and attend, because it's nice to get both sides of the story. So let's go into our next slide, which just takes us through what is dual rights. So dual rights is, this for me is the link for CE and F&O, and this is key. So one thing I would say to you as in my journey so far in terms of getting this right is read the configuration document that Microsoft has given to us, because you need to get it right. So this has to be done on the common data service before anything is configured on the customer engagement side, because now there's a concept that's been introduced of a company in customer engagement, and that needs to really be mastered from a finance and operation in terms of setting up that legal entity. Once that's enabled correctly, that's when you're able to see this customers in customer engagement. And these are like, it's an attribute that's required for many entities on the customer engagement side. So my recommendation here is actually follow the configuration guide, ensure that all the related maps are running, because if they're not, this might cause some issues downstream. So let's just talk about what this will do. So we get that real time, we get that bi-directional integration of data between D365 F&O and Dataverse. So this is for documents, that's for master data and reference data. So for me, this is the power. It glues everything together and it just happens in the background. So there's not much that we need to do. It's fantastic. That's a tick box for me. So let's go into our project contracts. So when it comes to project contracts and projects, we are probably used from an F&O or classic PMA, where we actually able to create this from a finance and operations side, create project contracts, create projects. Well, now we don't have that capability. So they're all project contracts, and projects are mastered on the customer engagement side, and it's one way to finance and operation. So when it comes to a project contract customer, which equates to what is our funding source, we've got visibility of this from a finance and operations side. But when it comes to actually saying, determining the split, say if you've got multiple funding sources, that is mastered on the customer engagement side. So be mindful of what you can do and what you cannot do. So when it comes to contracts, again, the creation of this is from the customer engagement side. From an F&O, we can view, we can, apply some attributes to the contract and the project itself, but that's the most that we can do. And when it comes to the project contract lines, so this translates to our project contract line, which is against the billing rule. So the ones that are covered is time and material and fixed price. So while we're on these types of projects anyways, there's only 3 types that are covered, which is fixed price, which is your milestone, time and material, and internal. Internal is just where it's also mastered in customer engagement, where that project is created and it's not linked to a contract, that translates to an internal project. So be mindful that all of this are housed on the customer engagement side, and we're not actually able to create them. But what we can actually do is we can default financial dimensions against the customer. We can default it against the project contract or the project itself. So this is mastered in finance and operation. And when it comes to sales tax is also mastered on the finance and operation side. So what else around project contracts or project are we using? So you might remember we had project hierarchies or sub-projects in classic PMA. Well, with this deployment option, we don't have any abilities of creating this. So that's gone, unfortunately. So when it comes to project budgets, we could create budgets against our projects. We don't have that capability, but remember we touched on the forecast. So we're able to forecast. So that capability is there, but that's also mastered on the customer engagement side. So another one to be mindful about is maybe on types of projects where we previously could create investment projects where we could capitalize. We don't have those capabilities anymore. And another important one, which be mindful of, is there is no P2P integration at this point to projects. So these are things that just bear in mind and consider that you don't have them available anymore with this deployment option, and possibly if there are things that your client needs, you may look to enhancements. But I would say just watch out, always keep an eye on Microsoft's roadmap, because these are things that may be coming soon. So let's also get into what we call transaction categories. So this is what glues a lot of stuff together. I mean, there's a lot of key considerations around this when it comes to your goal builds. But what I just want to emphasize here is these get mastered on the customer engagement side. So when they're mastered on the customer engagement side, what they in turn create is our transaction categories on the F&O side. So again, it's a one-way. And when they do that, it automatically creates what we call our shared categories. And I think in classic PMA, you're probably used to this. So it will automatically create expense type, fee, hour, and item for us. So that's brilliant. But what we will now need to do from a finance and operations side is we will actually need to manually go and set up our project categories. So it's almost picking to say, right, for this type of application, we've got expense type, we've got fee, we've got hours, but for this specific legal entity, I only want to set up expense or hour. So you then decide which ones, but they have to be actually at the base. The origin needs to be from the transaction category. So be mindful of that. Let's talk about actuals and the integration journal. So this is what glues everything in terms of our transactions. So as I mentioned, time is all mastered on the customer engagement side. Expense, yes, it might be from finance and operations, but that feeds onto the customer engagement side and in turn goes into our actuals. So now when we get these, they are then integrated, obviously using dual rights to finance and operations. So initially they are on an actual staging. There is a very important batch job, which is the input from staging, which pulls these actuals from the actual staging, and then we get to view them on the integration journal. So in terms of the integration journal, this is kind of the only journal that we can talk about. We might have been used to, project journal, all those capabilities, we actually can't create them. So there isn't any. So all we can do is view this integration journal. And what we can also do is apply attributes to it. Before we actually post into our project, before we post into our project subledger and the GL. So we also have the ability to redistribute based on financial dimensions and to apply sales tax. There is very limited capabilities around, corrections, because I think because these transactions are mastered from customer engagement, they will need to be corrected there. Not saying after the journal is posted, we still have the ability to do some adjustments, but just be mindful in terms of what you're able to do from an F&O perspective. So obviously, once this journal gets posted, that feeds into our project transactions, and we can start to view that, yeah, these are the posted transactions against this project. And at the back of that, the voucher number, the tax number, exchange rates get updated against the actual staging. So now let's have a look at how it all glues together. So this focuses on the project management side, and that other half is on the project accounting side. So we spoke about contracts. So you feed into, These are all mastered on the customer engagement side, the contract line, the project itself, and the actuals. And then when we start to look at the accounting side, so again, I'm viewing the accounting side as our back office. This is where we start to talk about our cost and revenue profiles. This is where we define how we're actually the ledger posting and what estimates profiles we're using in terms of the revenue recognition engine. Our rules is what glues that setup to our projects. In terms of our actuals, this journal posting, that's our integration journal posting. Once that's posted, that feeds into our project ledger and also in turn our general ledger. So this is how it all pieces together. But one thing to also be mindful of is that we've got the capabilities around splitting time into different periods. So it's a setup in the PMA parameters where you can actually define whether you want that split to be daily, monthly. So that's a cool capability, which I think many people would leverage off in terms of trying to bucket their time into the right periods. So something to look out for from a finance and operations side. Let's touch on the invoicing. So from an invoicing perspective, again, this is a one-way from customer engagement to finance and operations. So once these are confirmed, it will create an invoice proposal header. So for anything that's relates to unbilled sales transactions, be mindful that these have got to be posted. So this is what needs to be posted on our actuals. So that would then need to be pulled from our actual stagings to create our project proposal lines. So sometimes you might go in against your invoice proposals and see an invoice proposal header for a zero value. And that probably means that you've got some unbilled sales transactions that must be posted, which will be what will create our lines. So there isn't much more. And, as I said, in terms of the billing milestones, these are synced to our actuals and they'll create our fixed price on account as well. So I think there's not much apart from that we can't create invoices from a finance and operations side. All of this happens on the customer engagement side, and all we are able to do is view and make changes to the sales text, maybe add dimensions, but that's about it. So let's go on to the next one when it comes to our revenue recognition. So on our revenue recognition, I believe we still have a good, powerful engine there. Nothing's changed. It sits in finance and operations. Be mindful that once the milestone is integrated across onto the F&O side, that will create an estimate for us, but that's from a fixed price perspective. Other than that, I would say for time and material, we still have capabilities around cost and revenue recognition connected. Revenue can be optionally accrued at the time of posting or at invoicing. And we still have capabilities around reversing that accrued revenue at the time of invoicing. So that's good. Everything's intact. Now let's go to our fixed price. When it comes to our fixed price, the cost and revenue recognition is separate. So we still have that. And you can also recognize revenue at the time of invoicing. Plus, we can also use the periodic functions of either doing it at a completed contract or a percentage complete based on the completed task. So that's kind of where we are in terms of the revenue. I don't believe there's much change. I guess be mindful that where we previously had these set up against, in terms of the ledger and estimate setting, we had it against the project group. This now actually sits against what we call our project cost and revenue profiles. And what glues it together to the project is project cost and revenue profile rules. I think it's called profile rules. So now what we're going to do is we are going to just go and have a feel, see what it looks like from a finance and operation perspective. So if you bear with me while I just share my finance and operations screen. And I'm just going to refresh my screen for a minute here. And I also want to refresh this one here. So I'm just conscious of time as well. So it's going to be a very high level overview. So what I want to take you through is, yes, if you navigate to project management and accounting, so this is what you're able to see. This is what it looks like. I've highlighted a few favorites, so ignore that. But you can see it's so much more tidy and friendly UI as compared to classic PMA. So I've just got a legal entity here where classic PMA is enabled. So, oops, so this is my favorites. Give me a second while I quickly go to it just to show you the difference in terms of, look at that. Look at how busy all of that is compared to that. So big difference. So now let's quickly go into, this is where we still, in terms of our projects, as I said, we still have the capabilities in terms of showing our default accounting. So for me, this is key because this is where we can define our project group. We can define our sales tax group, and we can also define our financial dimensions. One thing to be mindful about, though, is that we are not able to, if you had resource, in classic PMA, we could define some dimensions against our resources and then therefore analyze or report against, our revenue cost based on, say, the dimensions against the resource, an example being a cost center. Well, we don't have that capability now. When someone does a time entry, when that comes across onto the finance and operations side, it's not going to say, okay, this person belongs to this cost center. So there's a gap there. So just be mindful and maybe look to doing some enhancements and, just look out for Microsoft's roadmap as well. So back to the project, in terms of what else we can see, we can still see the plan in terms of our forecasts. We are able to see that. From a managed perspective, I guess we can see in terms of the processes, if it was a fixed price, you would have these enabled. In a case here, in terms of the bill, we're just able to see our invoice proposals and invoice journals. And we can also see the related information, such as your pending transactions, posted transaction. From a control, we can see a statement and a cash flow. So the key thing here for me is this related information in terms of defining the project. So that it's very similar when it comes to the project contract. So similar where we're able to define our dimensions. Now let's quickly go into the fixed price revenue estimate projects. So again, this is at the back of our milestones. They'll come and create this. In terms of the capabilities, nothing's changed. We can still come in here and create something new. You can see I've got one posted here. We can still do the reverse. We can still do the eliminate. So nothing's changed from that engine. So the only thing I would say be mindful of is when we come to this project cost and revenue profiles. So if I open that quickly, this is where we now define our ledger setup in terms of whether it's going to profit, P&L account or balance. And this is where we also define in terms of what the system should do from a revenue recognition perspective. So all that's still there. Previously, it was against the group, so just be mindful. And in terms of how that's glued together, just look out for what we call the project cost and revenue rule. So this is what says, okay, for this fixed price or this time and material, for a contract relation, use this profile. So that's what glues it together. And then when it comes to our invoice proposals, as I said, there's, this is mastered from a customer engagement. We can't actually create, so you can see there's no create button. You can see your totals, you can see sales tax. If it's still in proposal, some of these are probably all invoiced. So if it's still in proposal, this one is an example where I can see a zero value. So that means the system's created the header, but the lines haven't come across. So we probably have some unbilled that still need to be pushed across. We can actually change the tax when it's still not posted. We can actually adjust, make changes to the dimensions against these invoices before they get posted. So that's just be mindful that those are the only things that I think we can do from an invoicing perspective. We can't create, they're mastered on the customer engagement side. So we spoke about the integration journal. So let's just see, this is it, our project operations integration journal. So if I just click on the lines for this one, so this is what pulls from our actual staging. So all the time entry, expense entry, as you can see, that's a travel expense. This is hours. So if I said edit here, I can't change anything here. I can't change this 4 hours. I can't do anything. I just have to post it. But what I can do, though, is I can, view accounting. Let's just see whether that will let me do something here. So here is where I'm actually able to actually come here and say, well, this needs to post against this dimension or department or project. So this is where you can start to apply your attributes when it comes to that. You can also come and, so if I go back one step, so you can also make changes to your tax, your tax group and your item sales tax. So these are the things that we're able to do, and distribute amounts. Distribute in terms of our financial dimensions. So we can do that, but nothing else. And it's just then posting it. And if then any changes need to be done, it's either corrections from a CE perspective, or we do some adjustments from an F&O. So that's, largely around the integration journal. And what's another important element is this import from staging. So this is what pushes our transactions from the actual staging onto our integration journal. My recommendation is just have this set to a batch continually running. There's nothing different in terms of we still have project groups, but I think they're more significant from a reporting perspective. In terms of our ledger posting, nothing has changed. We touched on the transaction categories. So this is where they come and are defaulted into F&O. But I think of importance to you would probably be the creation of these project categories. So this is one of the very few places where you can actually see a new button on the finance and operations side. So here you would just say, okay, this is what I want to do. I don't actually want to create anything at the moment, so I'm just going to delete that. But that is what we've got from a finance and operation perspective, and just being mindful of time. I don't think there's anything else key, but it's just interesting to see how much tidy and good it looks as compared to classic PMA. So now what we will do is we will quickly go back in terms of our slide deck and finish off our very last slide, which is really in terms of our key considerations. So I just want to give a few in terms of data. So I would just say plan your data migration side of it. Pay attention to if you've got any needs around API and data load. Consider, in terms of your gold build strategy, because this is across two platforms. And these considerations are more from a deployment, which is across the both platforms. In terms of environments, ensure environments are in sync when copying environments around. Obviously, ensure dual rights is enabled. And also there's a couple of considerations around your storage capacity when planning your strategy. Licensing, check the licensing requirements, ensure you have the right mix base. Also consider if there's other D365 products that form part of your solution. And when it comes to enhancements and roadmaps, I would just say always cross-reference with Microsoft before you go into making any changes. So I think in terms of our presentation for today, we will leave it at that. There's many topics, which are certainly topics for another day, but we will leave it at that. Just note that this session will be uploaded to YouTube within 14 days. Let's take your questions. Thank you.